No paranormal vibe at all, at first. A few months into the school year, I brought in 2 portraits of 2 politicians/activists to hang on the wall. 1 man and 1 woman. I taught social studies, and they were very relevant to my lessons. I hung them on 2 pieces of metal drilled into the wall using round hooks. One of them, the portrait of the woman, kept falling off the wall. I had carpeted floor so it wasn't damaged, just annoying. My coworkers joked that a sexist ghost was haunting my room. None of the windows in this entire building could be opened, so I couldn't blame on the wind, and they fell when I was in the room with the door closed, so I literally had no idea what caused it. One day, I was not in the mood, so as soon as I heard the portrait fell one more time, I cursed the ghost out, saying it was disrespectful toward the female activist. I didn't actually believe there was a ghost haunting my room. I just yelled into the void out of frustration. After that, the wall clock that had been fine suddenly began to fall down multiple times a week. One day, one of my coworkers whose room was next to mine pulled me into a room and told me this. Both of our rooms were probably haunted. The person using the room before me was very uneasy and always found excuses to not be alone in the room. Before I came, her room was very haunted. One time, the hallway camera captured footage of the doorknob turned by itself, while absolutely no person was even near that wing. After I came, my room became the active one, with all the stuff falling off the wall. I was moved to a different room the year after, and never had an issue. Later, I found out the school building used to be a dingy orphanage. I would like to say, before I begin, I hate the first day of school. And the reason is because of the reasons you wouldn't think or believe. To start off with my story, let me provide a little bit of backstory. I am currently 23 and just graduated college. This happened when I was 17 and a senior in high school. My name is Jesse. And back then I used to date this girl named Oliva. At the time, we was together for about 4 months. Anyways, it was the start of senior year as anyone would be. I was just as excited. One more year, and then college, I thought to myself as I met up with my girlfriend Olivia in the morning. As we had the same bus stop, I could definitely tell that there was something off about her. She was more quiet than usual, although she wasn't really a loudmouth or a very social person anyways. I still could tell there was something off, although at the time I didn't pay that much attention. As we got to the high school, we ate breakfast, and then I went to my first period class. For a little bit of context, I hated my first period. It was math, and I'm not really the math person. We had a substitute teacher that day, so honestly we didn't do anything important. Well, I needed up dozing off when I later got woken up to the fire alarms going off. Although I was pissed, I just took it as any other drill. However, the school was acting, as it was the real deal. I messaged Olivia to see if she was okay. Then we went to go outside. The substitute didn't even know which door we went out of. It was a mess, although I wish that was all. It ended up being a false alarm, and no one could figure out how the fire alarm got set off anyways. The day counties around lunch, which for me is around 3rd period. As I thought the day was getting better, I got up, getting called to the library, which is at the 1st floor, and I'm on the 4th floor. As I went to the library, it was only the librarian, me, and some random guy. I just got called only for a book I needed to return. However, our librarian was super chill and said I could stay there for the rest of the period if I wanted. Obviously I did, and in the meantime I decided to repay her courtesy by helping her out. I was working on fixing one of the computers when you could hear this very loud humming, or like pages in a book being flipped really loud. At first, us 3 ignored it because I simply thought it was just someone else in there. However, 5 minutes later, that same noise. Again, this time I knew that something wasn't right, as the librarian asked us if there was anyone else. That walked in, so we all 3 clearly knew no one else came in. As we went to check it out, we found like 5 or 6 books just laying open on the floor. I'm not huge into the paranormal, but this was weird. All of a sudden, while we was all standing there in that hall, we all heard like a running sound, and the doors to the library slammed shut. We all ran to the doors to see them shut when they was always open, and these was big heavy doors lit would have been difficult to slam them at this point. The librarian called the principal were the pierceable Mr. Hank, and us three looked at the cameras. We was all astonished by seeing on camera the door slamming shut on its own. Obviously, this freaked everyone out. However, he said that it must have been a big gust of wind or something in fourth period. I was telling everyone about what happened, including my girlfriend Oliva. Oddly enough, Oliva told me that she has been hearing weird things in her house as well, although I thought she was just trying to say that to try and comfort me later that day. I ended up getting to actually spend the night. There, as my parents and her parents, was very chill. As everyone was going to sleep, I noticed that Oliva's closet was open. I got up and closed it. And she said she could have swore she closed it, but with the crazy day, I was just ready for bed. I woke up around 3 in the morning. Co-invent, right? Anyways, as I got up to use the bathroom, when I got back, I noticed her closet door was open again. Only by a little. Now I know she closed it. I was thinking that maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, but my gut told me to wake Olvia up and her parents and check it out, which. That's what I did. I quietly shocked Olvia and got her to slowly get out of bed. Be mindful, it was pretty dark in there. Then, as we was getting up, Oliva screamed as something grabbed her ankle from under the bed. I just started kicking whatever it was. Her parents came flying in there, and as they cut on the lights, we all was in horror as we seen a middle-aged creep around mid-40s under her bed. Olvia's father and I ended up detaining the man, and when cops came, the cops found out the name of the man was Jason and is a homeless stalker who has been living there for a couple weeks. No, as he confessed. Although me and Olvia broke up 3 months later that year, and all the school stuff could have been paranormal that day, will always been known to me as the craziest first day back at school of my life. The morning of the first day back at Ridgewood High was the kind of crisp autumnal day that made me think about new beginnings. But as I stepped off the bus and onto the familiar asphalt of the school parking lot, something in the air felt off. It wasn't the usual blend of excitement and dread that accompanied the start of a new school year. It was more like an electric current just barely contained. I brushed it off, attributing it to preschool jitters. My friends and I had spent the summer apart, and as I navigated through the chaotic sea of students, I was eager to reconnect. Everything was normal, or at least as normal as high school ever got, until I noticed a pair of eyes following me from the edge of the parking lot. The guy was standing near a row of trees, partially obscured by their shadows. He wore a hoodie pulled low over his face, but the glint of his gaze was unmistakable. I shivered, wondering if it was just my imagination. I tried to shrug off the feeling and went inside, meeting up with my friends and diving into the usual chatter about summer vacations. By lunchtime, the feeling of being watched had intensified. I caught glimpses of that same hoodie in the hallway and once again near the lockers. It was unnerving, but I brushed it off, attributing it to first day jitters, or maybe even the excitement of seeing familiar faces. The next day, things escalated. I was walking to my car when I noticed a small note on my windshield. It was handwritten in neat but shaky cursive. "I've been waiting for this day." My heart raced. There was no signature, no indication of who had left it. I immediately showed it to my best friend Jamie, but she laughed it off as a prank. I wasn't so sure. Over the next few days, the notes continued, each one more disturbing than the last. One said, "I know where you live," and another, "I see you in your dreams." I started to feel paranoid, like I was being watched all the time. It was getting harder to focus in class, and even walking through the halls felt like navigating a maze of shadows. I decided to report it to the school administration. Principal Sanders took my concerns seriously and promised to look into it, but he couldn't offer much reassurance. He did, however, suggest that maybe I could find some comfort in talking to the new school counselor, Mrs. Carter. She seemed kind, though she looked at me with an unsettling intensity. That evening, I found a final note in my locker, written in the same shaky cursive. "Tomorrow, I'll be closer." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound seemed amplified. Every shadow seemed menacing. At school the next day, the anxiety was unbearable. I felt like I was in a horror movie, just waiting for the inevitable jump scare. During lunch, I went to see Mrs. Carter. I wanted to ask for her advice, to see if she could offer any strategies for dealing with this stalker. She welcomed me into her office, and for a while we talked about the notes and how they made me feel. As I was leaving, Mrs. Carter said, "You know, I've been following your situation very closely." I was taken aback. "What do you mean?" She smiled, but there was something unsettling in her eyes. "I've been observing your reactions. You're handling it remarkably well." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. "Are you saying—" Before I could finish, she took a step closer. "Oh, don't worry. I'm just here to help." I backed away, my mind racing. The office door was locked behind me. I realized then that the intensity in her eyes wasn't just professional concern. It was something far darker. "Mrs. Carter, are you—" The door burst open, and Principal Sanders and a couple of security guards rushed in. They restrained Mrs. Carter, who was trying to hide a smirk behind a mask of calm. I stared in shock as they revealed the truth. Mrs. Carter had been behind the notes all along. She was not only the new counselor, but also the one orchestrating the entire ordeal. The plot twist was that she had been studying me for weeks, preying on my fears as part of a twisted experiment to test her own psychological theories. She wanted to see how far she could push someone before they broke. I left the school that day with a mixture of relief and lingering fear. Ridgewood High had always been a place of normal teenage drama, but it had also become a battleground for a disturbing psychological game. As I looked back at the school, I wondered if things would ever be the same again.